Hello my kitchenettes and welcome to David's Kitchen. Today I'm actually going to make a vegan cake. It was my niece's birthday at the end of March and we were unfortunately in lockdown and therefore we weren't going to be able to get together. I had promised her that I would make her a vegan quote unquote almond joy cake, and I'm going to show you how we make this. It is now the middle of May and we are able to do some social distancing, and we're going to have an outdoor social distance visit this weekend, and I'm going to surprise her with her belated birthday cake. And my niece's girlfriend is vegan, and so we all are going to enjoy this vegan cake. I made one similar to this in the past and it was absolutely delicious. So watch me how I put together this vegan cake and I'll take you through all the steps. The first thing that we need to do for this vegan cake is make what they call our vegan eggs. And it's basically ground flax seeds. This is 1.5 tablespoons of ground flax seed. And to that I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of hot water. Actually 4.5 tablespoons of hot water. And I'm just going to stir this around a little bit. And it's interesting, the flax seeds and hot water will kind of form this sort of gloopy, almost egg white texture. And that is our egg replacement for this recipe. So we'll just set that over to the side and we'll use them in a little bit. We don't use the mixer for this. I'm going to whisk everything together, but I do like to use my mixer bowl because it has the handle on it. It gives me a lot of stability when I'm trying to mix everything together. So first and foremost, we have 2¼ cups of all-purpose flour. Into that, we're going to add 3/4 cup of cocoa powder. And if you've listened to me in other recipes, I like to make a combination of regular cocoa powder and special dark cocoa powder. I mix them together. It gives it a much better, richer flavor. To that, I'm going to add 1¾ cups of granulated sugar. I have 2 teaspoons of baking soda and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. And all these dry ingredients, I'm just going to whisk together with the whisk. As you can see here, it kind of gets rid of any clumps and makes things nice and easy to blend in when we put in our wet ingredients. So now we're ready for the wet ingredients, and we are going to start with 1.5 cups of, this is an almond coconut milk mixture. You could use soy milk, what have you, just as long as it's vegan. To that, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of oil, and I like to use almond oil. It's something that's been fairly recent in the market that a lot of people are starting to use. I like it. It can hold a hot temperature if you're frying anything, and when you're baking, it really gives a nice flavor. So remember that, almond oil. Then we are going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And I'm also, because I'm making this an almond joy cake, I'm adding an additional teaspoon of almond extract to start incorporating the almond flavor. Last but not least, we have our vegan eggs. And we're going to mix all this together. Don't want to over mix it. All right, you can see it's all coming together very nicely. And then last but not least, we're going to put in 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. You could also use white vinegar. What happens when you put vinegar in a cake is it makes the consistency a little bit crumbly. So I'm sure you've all had real traditional, if you ever had some real traditional Southern red velvet cake, a big key to that is that there's vinegar in that mix. And the vinegar is what kind of makes it a little bit crumbly. And this recipe, for whatever reason, calls for that as well. And we'll see how it turns out. So anyway, you can see that's fairly easy to do. I have 2 8-inch cake pans. I'm actually going to make 3 layers. What I've done is greased them, put some parchment paper on the bottom and greased them again. I'll go ahead and fill these up and put the cakes in the oven for about 30 minutes, 25, 30 minutes at 350. We're waiting just another couple more seconds or so until the cake is just about ready out of the oven. I got my cooling racks ready to go, and we'll put, there's my favorite sound. Let's go and see what's in the oven. I guess I already know what's in the oven. Oh wow, these look like they're really puffed up. Let me get my little cake tester, professional toothpick testing. Oh wow, these are done. Wow. Look how beautiful these look. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so I'm gonna bake the third layer, let these cool for a little bit, and then I'm gonna wrap them. Remember what I told you, one of my secrets is to refrigerate cakes after they cool on the rack. I will go ahead and put them in some plastic wrap and put them in the refrigerator for several hours so that when we ice them, they're much easier to put together. So we'll see you soon. Now I'm going to show you how easy it is to invert these cakes out of these pans if you grease and paper them properly. So once again, we're going to do a double invert. So the first one we're going to do is just flip it over. You can give it a little tap, but I heard it come off right away. Then we have our parchment paper. You just peel that off, and then you take your other cooling rack and invert it over so it is right side up. There you go. We'll cool these and then wrap them in saran wrap and put them in the refrigerator. Hello, my kitchenettes. Now we're going to make the filling for our almond joy cake. And I'm kind of modifying a version of a vegan German chocolate cake to make the coconut almond filling. For a German chocolate, you'd use coconut and pecan. So we're going to start off with a half a cup of vegan butter that's in this pan. Then I'm going to take a cup of coconut milk and 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Use my little mini whisk and just whisk that all together so it's nice and smooth. Then we have a cup of brown sugar. And we're going to cook these 3 ingredients together until it gets thick. And then after that's thickened, we're going to add a cup of chopped almonds and 2 cups of coconut flakes and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So let's go over to the stove and I'll show you how I heat all this up. The first thing we're going to do here is go ahead and melt the plant-based butter so it's nice and melted. Then we're going to go ahead and add in the brown sugar and our coconut milk cornstarch mixture. Once again, that's a cup of coconut milk with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. And at this point, I'm going to just use a whisk, and we're going to keep cooking this until it gets to a boil and then also gets thick. This will probably take about 4 or 5 minutes, and I'll show you what it looks like. It's important that you are constantly whisking this, otherwise it'll stick to the bottom and burn. You don't want that to happen. I want you to see how this looks. It definitely has gotten thick, and you can also see if I stop whisking for just a minute that it is boiling. You'll see these bubbles of the boil just starting to come up, but look how much thicker it's gotten. I'm just gonna go for about another minute. This helps really cook this cornstarch and really thicken up the mixture, and you can see it boiling there, and it's thick. I am just gonna let it go for 1 more minute, and then we're gonna take it off. All right, I took it off the heat, and the next step is that we are going to add the coconut. Ooh-wee. And our pecans. And then last but not least, we're going to add the vanilla. But I want to go ahead and stir this in. If I was smart, I would have used a little bit of a larger saucepan, so it would have been easier for me to stir all this in. but as it's getting stirred in now, as you can see, I can definitely maneuver it a little bit more, get it all incorporated. There you go. Wow, that looks really good. Just, you know, typically just like you would have for a German chocolate cake. Last is our 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Now, you notice I put that in after it is taken off the heat because you don't want to really cook the vanilla or boil it. You'll get all the flavor taken out of it. So while it's nice and hot, the vanilla blends right in. And there you go. This is done. It looks awesome. It smells great. And this now has to cool completely. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer it to a glass bowl and let it cool completely before we can put it between the layers of our Almond Joy cake. Hello, my kitchenettes. All right, we are on our home stretch of this Almond Joy cake, and it's time to make the frosting. To start off with the frosting, I have 1 cup of very soft vegan butter. You can get it that comes in stick form. I use 2 sticks of the vegan butter. To that, we are going to add 3/4 of a cup of cocoa powder. Once again, I mixed the regular cocoa powder and then the dark cocoa powder. We're going to have 4 cups of confectioner's sugar, just a little under a 1/2 cup of almond milk. And because I want to give it an even more almondy flavor, I'm going to add a 1.5 teaspoons of almond extract, and I'm just going to go ahead and add that right now, right to the milk. Bring this over to the KitchenAid with the whisk attachment, and we'll whip up a really nice frosting. To get this frosting started, I just went ahead and added the confectioner's sugar and the cocoa powder to the butter, and I'm just going to start it very slow until it starts incorporating. Then I'm going to go ahead and start adding the milk just a little bit. You can see it's almost all blended in. I'm not going to put in all the milk because I want to check the consistency of it, and if needed, we'll either add a little bit more confectioner's sugar or a little bit more milk. Let's take a look and see what it looks like right now. Ooh, actually looks really good, really creamy. I'm just gonna stir the bottom a little bit and let it whip a little bit more. I think I'm gonna add about another 1/2 cup of confectioner's sugar. Wow, look at that. I went ahead and I ended up putting in about a whole nother full cup of confectioner's sugar. And look at this. Look how beautiful, fluffy, nice, pliable, great texture frosting that I have here. It's nice and airy and light. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my beater and get this frosting ready to put on the cake. Getting ready to ice the cake, and I got my cake turntable out, my cake plates. I'm actually just going to ice it on the plate because we're going to be serving it here at the house for my niece's birthday. If I was going to be bringing it somewhere, I would put it on a cardboard cake disc, but I'm going to, you know, just put it on here because I'm going to make it myself. One of the secrets of cake decorating that I always want to pay it forward to you guys is to make sure that your cakes are cold before you attempt to ice them. So as you can see, this was wrapped in the refrigerator and it's nice and cool. I'm going to go ahead and put the flat side up here. They're pretty flat to begin with, but just get it started with that. It's nice and cold. Remember, the other secret is to have a wet paper towel or dishcloth when you're getting ready to decorate so that you could wipe your hands and inevitably it doesn't get chocolate everywhere. Here is our cooled coconut and almond filling mixture, and as you can see, it's nice and thick. I'm going to go ahead and the way I'm going to do this cake is put a layer of this between each of the 2 layers, and then also on the top of the cake, and then I'll decorate the top with a little bit of frosting. I will go ahead and do this for the next couple of layers. Just go ahead and, you know, use your offset spatula to move everything nice and even around the sides. I just put the third layer on top. Remember, you always want to put the flat side of your last layer on the top. It's okay that there's a little bit of space here between these other layers because we're going to fill it with frosting. And on this last layer, I'm just going to go ahead and put some of this filling on top, but I'm not going to push it all the way over to the sides. Just kind of, I want to leave maybe around a ½ an inch before it gets to the edge, because what I will do is go ahead and pipe some frosting. So, you know, I got it started here. That leaves me enough room to plan to pipe some frosting on the end. I'm going to clean this spatula, and then we are going to start putting the frosting on the sides. Now, once again, use your offset spatula, and the first coat is going to go fairly short, thin strokes, because what I'm trying to do is just fill in between the layers, as you can see, with all this frosting. So I'm kind of pushing pretty hard as I'm cutting through the cake so that I fill the gap between the layers with this frosting. That will also help keep the filling inside the cake and not oozing out later on. Now that we got that first thin layer of frosting on the whole cake, you can go ahead and start adding a bit more frosting to the rest of the cake. I'm just kind of slathering it on here, and then once it's done, what I will do is hold my spatula straight and then actually turn the turntable to smooth everything out nice and even. So we're going to do this. Oh, this is going to be so good. My niece and her girlfriend are going to go crazy. I'm going crazy. What am I talking about? This is one of my favorite combinations of flavors. Chocolate, coconut, almonds. I love Almond Joys. I love Mounds. So this is going to be that thing just in a cake form. If you're going to start doing some of this cake decorating yourself, you're going to want to invest in some basic cake tools. And I'll save a whole nother video about my toolbox, if you will. But I have a smaller offset spatula, which just gives you a lot more control than the big one. And I'm just going to clean this up a little bit so it's nice and level. And it just gives me the perfect amount of room to go ahead and pipe my final border that I'm going to do on the top of this cake. I'm also taking out my cake comb that I talked to you about, and I'm just going to do these nice little swoops, as you can see, as I'm going from the bottom to the top. And you can see how it's really giving the cake a much more, you know, somewhat professional look to it versus, I mean, I do love very rustic looking cakes as well, but you know, this is my niece's birthday. There's no one more special than her and my nephews, my nieces and nephews, so why not go to a little extra mile and make it look a little bit more fancy? So there you go. Last but not least, I have a pastry bag filled with some of the frosting, and I have just like a jagged star tip, and I'm just going to very slowly start making a nice little round border. The idea to this, you can do it so many different ways, is just to kind of get your groove going and just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Let's take a little stop. When you need to stop and push it down, what you want to do is you want to push the frosting tip into the frosting that you're working with, and that kind of stops it. So it stopped right there. I'm going to pick up again, and there we go. Nothing terribly fancy, but it just really makes it look special. There you go. So this is completely done. As you can see, it is the birthday cake for my niece, and I can't wait to share it with her. It's vegan. I love the fact that I can make vegan cakes. Vegan cakes are really tasty. What's one thing that I've learned about them having a vegan diet is There's really good vegan baked goods out there, and this is one of them. I actually follow a very popular and dear blogger out there, or Instagram blogger out there. Her name is I Am Tabitha Brown. I just love her voice. I just love the way she does her videos, and her voice is so soothing, and she says this really cute thing about, oh, that's my business. So I noticed that she doesn't make dessert. Maybe she'll make it her business to try one of my vegan cakes one of these days and see how she likes it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. For God's sakes, wash your hands and stay safe. Ciao.